I am Zaria, 33 years old, and my parents just raised the rent on my damp basement room to $2,500 a month to fund my golden child brother's failing luxury business. When my entitled sister-in-law mocked my little budgeting app as a pathetic hobby, I did not argue or cry. I simply wrote a check, dropped my house keys on the counter, and walked out into the pouring rain without a backward glance. What my family did not know was that my little app had just sold to a global tech conglomerate for 8 figures, and their own financial ruin was only days away. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the family scapegoat who quietly built an empire in the shadows while everyone else underestimated your worth. The piece of paper slid across the polished granite of the kitchen island, stopping right next to my half-empty mug of cheap coffee. I stared at the bold print on the lease amendment. My mother Patricia stood opposite me, meticulously adjusting the brim of her extravagant Sunday church hat. It was a massive feathered creation that she wore specifically to make sure everyone in our congregation knew she was the deacon's wife. Your rent for the basement annex is now $2,500 a month, starting tomorrow. She declared, her voice carrying that practiced righteous tone she reserved for directing the church choir or scolding people she deemed beneath her. I looked from the typed paper to the water stain, currently spreading across the ceiling, right above the kitchen sink. $2,500. That was what they wanted me to pay to live in a windowless basement that flooded every single time it rained heavily. My father, Deacon Silas, sat at the head of the dining table. He did not even bother to look up from the sports section of his newspaper. He took a slow sip of his orange juice, completely unbothered by the extortion happening 5 feet away from him. Your brother needs an emergency capital injection for his luxury concierge fleet, Silas stated flatly, turning the page with a loud crinkle. The Lord commands us to support our family legacy, Zaria. It is time you stopped being so selfish and pulled your weight around here. Before I could even formulate a response to that absolute absurdity, Madison made her presence known. My white sister-in-law leaned heavily against the doorframe of the kitchen. She was swirling a generous pour of my expensive reserve wine in her glass. It was a bottle I had specifically hidden in the very back of the pantry to save for a special occasion, but boundaries meant absolutely nothing to Madison. She smirked, inspecting her freshly manicured nails, the diamonds on her fingers catching the morning light. "Do not act like a victim," Zaria, Madison drawled, rolling her eyes as if my very existence exhausted her. "Andre is the firstborn son. He carries the Washington family name. You just sit on a laptop all day playing with your little budgeting app. You should be grateful your parents even let you stay here taking up space." The sheer audacity hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Her words told me everything I needed to know about my place in this house. I was not a daughter. I was a human safety net. I looked over as Andre sauntered into the kitchen. My older brother was wearing a brand new designer tracksuit undoubtedly paid for by my parents, secretly remortgaging this very house for the second time. He grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, tossing it casually in the air, as if he did not have a care in the world. "Come on, Z," Andre chimed in, his mouth full as he took a loud bite. "My fleet is expanding. I am securing high-end corporate clients now. I just need a bridge loan, basically. You do not have any real expenses down there in the dungeon anyway. It is not like you go out or have a social life." I felt a bitter, sharp laugh rising in my throat. A bridge loan for a fleet that consisted of 3 leased SUVs that were currently sitting in a repair shop across town because he forgot to pay the commercial insurance premiums. It was always the same story with Andre. When I was 16, I worked all summer at a diner to buy a used car so I could drive to my advanced placement classes. Silas forced me to give the car to Andre because he needed it to get to football practice. Andre totaled it 3 weeks later, and Silas told me I should have bought something safer. I remembered the day of my college graduation, standing completely alone on the campus green in my cap and gown, watching other students hug their proud parents. I waited for hours for a family that never showed up. They had been too busy bailing Andre out of jail for wrecking another uninsured car, draining my hard-earned tuition savings to pay for his elite defense lawyer. They told me then that family requires sacrifice. They just never mentioned that I was the only one expected to bleed. Patricia tapped her manicured fingernail against the granite countertop, bringing my focus sharply back to the present reality. We need the first month at the new rate transferred into the joint account by tomorrow morning, Zaria. Madison has her eye on a gorgeous new commercial space for Andre's downtown office, and the deposit is due by noon. I looked at the four of them standing in that pristine, heavily mortgaged kitchen. My mother desperate to maintain her image as the matriarch of a wealthy, highly favored family within the church community. My father willing to sacrifice his daughter's financial stability and mental health to prop up his son's delusions of grandeur. Andre the golden child, who had never faced a single consequence in 35 years of life. And Madison, the entitled wife, happily bleeding my parents dry while mocking the very person who had been quietly keeping the electricity from being shut off for the past 6 months. I did not argue, I did not raise my voice cry or throw a fit. Fighting with people who are absolutely committed to misunderstanding you is a complete waste of breath. Instead, I reached into my leather tote bag and pulled out my checkbook. The silence in the kitchen was deafening as the scratch of my pen filled the room. I wrote out a check for exactly $2,500. I tore it from the pad and placed it gently on top of the insulting lease amendment. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out the heavy brass key to the basement door, and dropped it right on top of the check with a loud final clack. Patricia frowned deeply, her carefully drawn eyebrows pulling together in confusion. "What exactly are you doing?" she demanded, her hands going to her hips. "Paying my final month," I said, my voice steady, calm, and completely cold. "Consider it a parting gift. Use it for the commercial space." I grabbed my purse and turned my back on them, walking directly toward the front door. Silas finally slammed his newspaper down onto the table, his face reddening with righteous indignation. "You walk out that door right now, Zaria, and you are entirely on your own. We will not bail you out when that little computer hobby of yours goes under. You hear me? You will get nothing from us." Madison snickered loudly from the kitchen doorway, taking another long sip of my reserve wine. "Let her go, Silas. She will be back begging for her basement room by the weekend when she realizes how much the real world costs." I pushed the heavy oak front door open, stepping out into the cold, pouring rain. I did not bother to pack a bag. I did not look back at the house that had been a prison of expectations and unearned guilt for my entire life. I climbed into my unassuming sedan, the exact car Madison constantly made fun of for being basic, and pulled out of the driveway for the very last time. I drove straight downtown, the heavy rain washing the windshield clear as the manicured suburban lawns gave way to towering glass skyscrapers and bustling city streets. I pulled up to the highly secured entrance of the city's newest, most exclusive luxury high-rise. The valet immediately stepped out under his large umbrella, opening my car door with a deeply respectful nod. "Welcome home to the penthouse, Ms. Washington," he said smoothly, taking my keys. I thanked him and walked through the gleaming glass doors into the grand marble lobby. My family thought I was a pathetic failure running away into a storm to sleep on a friend's couch. They had absolutely no idea that my little budgeting app hobby had just been fully acquired by a global tech conglomerate for a cool 8 figures. And they certainly did not know that without my silent financial interventions, their own crushing financial ruin was already ticking down like a bomb. 7 days, exactly 168 hours have passed since I dropped my house keys on that granite kitchen island and walked out into the rain. I am standing in the center of my new living room, holding a crystal glass of sparkling water, staring out through floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a panoramic, unobstructed view of the city skyline. The silence in the penthouse is absolute, a stark, beautiful contrast to the constant chaotic demands of my parents' house. But the peace is briefly interrupted by the buzzing of my phone on the marble coffee table. It is my father, again. I let it go to voicemail just like the 42 other calls he and my mother have made this week. I tap the screen to play the messages on speaker, letting their voices echo in my massive sunlit sanctuary. "Zaria Washington, you are acting like a petulant, disobedient child." Silas's voice booms through the phone. He is using that heavy, righteous tone he normally reserves for the church pulpit, the one designed to make the congregation feel small and guilty. You disrespect your elders, and you disrespect the legacy of this family. The electric bill just bounced this morning, and your mother is beside herself with worry. The Lord commands us to honor our mother and father, and right now, you are failing your Christian duty. You need to come home, transfer your rent to the joint account, and fix this. The message ends with a sharp click. Another one begins immediately, this time from my mother, Patricia. Her tone is frantic, stripped of her usual composed deacon's wife facade. Zaria, how could you be so selfish? Patricia demands, her voice shrill. Madison is threatening to pack her bags and go stay with her parents because the deposit for Andre's new commercial space fell through. You know Madison requires a certain standard of living. You are actively jeopardizing your brother's marriage over a petty tantrum about rent. We raised you to be a team player. You are destroying this family. Call me back immediately. I delete the messages with a single unbothered swipe of my finger. They are panicking. Without my $800 a month, heavily subsidizing their extravagant suburban lifestyle, the cracks in their financial facade are rapidly splitting wide open. They truly believe my entire existence is meant to serve as a shock absorber for their reckless spending and Andre's delusions of grandeur. Elias, my wealth manager, sits across from me on a plush velvet sofa. He wears a meticulously tailored charcoal suit and an expression of complete professional discretion. He pretends not to hear the voicemails, opening his leather briefcase and sliding a thick stack of legal documents across the glass table. The contrast between my parents begging for utility money and Elias presenting me with the architecture of a financial empire is almost poetic. I spent my entire 20s bleeding myself dry for a family that saw me as a walking ATM. I remember being 22 years old, working double shifts, doing freelance coding while eating instant noodles for dinner. I had managed to save $5,000 to buy a reliable used car so I would not have to take the bus in the snow. I came home one afternoon to find my bank account completely drained. Silas had forged my signature to transfer the funds, using my hard-earned savings to buy Andre a luxury watch to celebrate a business deal that never even existed. When I confronted my father, crying and devastated, he told me that Andre needed to look successful to be successful, and that as a woman I did not need to worry about driving myself around anyway. He said God would provide for me. He just conveniently ignored the fact that he was stealing my provision to fund my brother's pride. Never again. Everything is ready for your signature, Ms. Washington, Elias says, tapping a heavy gold pen against the top document. We have structured the capital from your software acquisition exactly as you requested. The entity is completely shielded. It is a highly secured blind trust. No one will be able to trace the ownership, the assets, or the aggressive financial maneuvers back to your name. I take the pen. The name of the blind trust stares back at me in bold black ink. Onyx Holdings. I chose the name carefully. Onyx is a stone formed deep within the earth under immense crushing pressure. It is dark, heavy, and impenetrable. It absorbs negative energy and transforms it into raw, unyielding strength. That is exactly what I am doing with my trauma. I sign my name on the dotted line, officially transferring my massive 8-figure payout into a financial fortress they can never breach. Onyx Holdings is now a fully funded, legally untouchable ghost in the corporate system. With this structure, Onyx Holdings can acquire real estate, purchase distressed debt, and execute foreclosures without your identity ever appearing on a single public record, Elias explains, gathering the paperwork and placing it securely back into his briefcase. Congratulations, Zaria. You have complete control and absolute anonymity. What is your first move? I look out the window at the sprawling city below, feeling the solid weight of my own autonomy. I am going to buy myself a very nice lunch, I tell him. An hour later, I am sitting in a secluded corner booth at Le Petit Jardin, an upscale French bistro in the heart of the financial district. It is the kind of restaurant that requires reservations months in advance, the exact kind of place Madison is always desperately trying to get into so she can post photos of truffle risotto for her fake social media followers. I am halfway through a delicate roasted duck salad, enjoying the sheer uninterrupted peace of my own company. No one is demanding my paycheck. No one is insulting my career. No one is telling me I am a secondary citizen in my own life. The freedom is intoxicating. I take a sip of my iced tea, letting the smooth jazz playing over the restaurant speakers wash over me. I am finally safe. Then the heavy mahogany doors of the bistro swing open with violent force. The maitre d' steps forward, raising his hands in alarm, but the intruder pushes right past him, nearly knocking a tray of champagne glasses out of a waiter's hands. I look up and my newfound peace shatters instantly. It is Andre. He is wearing the same flashy designer tracksuit from last week, but his face is contorted with pure, unadulterated rage. He is scanning the elegant dining room frantically, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. My stomach drops as I realize my mistake. The location sharing application. Patricia had insisted we all download a family safety app years ago, under the guise of keeping track of each other during emergencies. In reality, it was a tool they only ever used to track me down when they needed a quick loan or someone to pick up their dry cleaning. I had completely forgotten to disable it on my new phone. Andre spots me sitting in the corner booth. His eyes lock onto mine and the fury radiating from him is palpable from across the room. He marches through the dining area, completely ignoring the shocked stares of the wealthy patrons and the restaurant staff trying to intercept him. His heavy footsteps echo against the hardwood floor, a steady, aggressive drumbeat of incoming chaos. He reaches my table, breathing heavily, his face flushed and sweating. He does not say hello. He does not ask how I have been since I walked out into the rain a week ago. He raises both of his hands high in the air and slams them down onto the pristine white tablecloth with a sickening, violent crack, rattling the fine china and spilling my iced tea straight across the table. The ice from my spilled tea scatters across the pristine white linen of the table. The waiter rushes forward, his eyes wide with alarm, but I raise a single finger to stop him. I do not flinch. I do not break eye contact with my brother. Andre is breathing like a cornered animal, his expensive designer tracksuit looking entirely out of place under the crystal chandeliers of the elegant bistro. He reaches into his jacket, pulls out a crumpled stack of paper, and slams it right into the puddle of spilled tea. "Sign it," he demands. His voice is a harsh, grating whisper that carries across the silent dining room. "I need your signature right now, Zaria." I glance down at the soggy paper. It is a commercial loan application. $50,000. The absolute audacity of this man is almost impressive. He tracks me down using a family safety app, interrupts my lunch, ruins my table, and immediately demands 50 grand, as if I am nothing but a walking automated teller machine. I look up at the waiter, who is still hovering anxiously nearby. "I will have a double espresso, please," I say smoothly. Then I look back at the man who has tormented me my entire life. "No." Andre stares at me as if I just spoke a foreign language. "What do you mean, no?" he hisses, his face twisting with entitlement. "You owe this family. We put a roof over your head. You have been living rent-free in the basement for years, while my business elevates the Washington name in this city. You are going to sign this paper because Dad said you have to pull your weight." I take a slow, deliberate breath. I lean forward, resting my forearms on the dry edge of the table. "I owe this family nothing, Andre. Let us talk about what is actually owed. Let us talk about my college graduation." His face twitches. He tries to stand taller, trying to physically intimidate me. "You are bringing up ancient history, Zaria. Grow up." "I am bringing up the foundation of your so-called success," I reply, my voice dropping an octave, razor sharp and perfectly controlled. "I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through school. I did not sleep. I bled for that degree. And on the day I was supposed to walk across that stage and receive my diploma, where were you? You were sitting in a county holding cell because you wrapped your uninsured car around a street lamp. And where were our parents? They were at the bank, draining my tuition savings account to pay for your elite defense lawyer. They stole my money to keep your record clean so you could pretend to be a legitimate businessman. You took my graduation. You took my savings. I owe you absolutely nothing." The waiter arrives silently, placing my espresso on the table before quickly retreating. I pick up the delicate porcelain cup and take a slow sip. The dark, bitter flavor is perfect. Andre is unraveling right in front of me. The polished golden child facade shatters completely, leaving behind a desperate, terrified man. His hands are physically shaking. He leans over the table, the veins bulging in his neck. "You do not understand how business works," he yells, his voice cracking. "You sit on a laptop playing with apps. I have real clients. I have overhead. If I do not get this $50,000 by Friday, the landlord is changing the locks on my storefront. He is practically spitting the words at me, completely unaware of the audience of wealthy patrons watching his public meltdown. That sounds like a personal problem, I say calmly, setting my cup down. You should probably go sell one of those leased luxury SUVs you love showing off on social media. Madison can definitely survive without her weekly shopping sprees for a month or two. I cannot sell them, he screams, pounding his fist on the table again. The leasing company is already threatening repossession. Madison does not know how bad it is. You have to help me, Zaria. If my doors get locked on Friday, I am ruined. And if I am ruined, Mom and Dad are ruined. I pause. The ambient noise of the restaurant seems to fade away completely. I look at my brother, analyzing the sheer, unfiltered terror in his eyes. He is not just panicking about his own vanity project. There is something much deeper hiding beneath his anger. Why would Mom and Dad be ruined? I ask softly. Andre freezes. He realizes he has said too much. He stammers, looking around the room as if the walls are closing in on him. He tries to snatch the wet loan application off the table, but I move faster, slamming my hand firmly over the damp paper. Tell me, Andre, I command. His pride is entirely broken now, replaced by raw panic. The commercial lease, he whispers, his voice trembling so badly I can barely hear him. My business credit was not strong enough to secure the building. Dad co-signed the master lease for the storefront. He used the house as collateral. If I default on Friday, the bank is going to call in the loan. They will take the house, Zaria. They will take everything. The silence that follows his confession is profound. The sheer magnitude of my parents' foolishness hits me like a freight train. Deacon Silas, the man who constantly preached from the pulpit about financial stewardship, Christian responsibility, and the sins of greed, had secretly bet the family home on a son who could not even pay his car insurance. My parents had risked the roof over their own heads to maintain the illusion of Andre's success, all while charging me exorbitant rent to live in a moldy basement just to secretly subsidize their gamble. The beautiful poetic justice of the situation washes over me. It is brilliant. Andre expects me to panic. He expects me to revert to my lifelong role as the family shock absorber, the obedient, quiet daughter who will instantly empty her pockets to save her parents from the consequences of their own disastrous choices. He looks at me with desperate, pleading eyes, waiting for me to pull out my checkbook and save the day. Instead, I smile. It is a slow, cold smile that reaches all the way to my eyes. Well, I say, my voice light and completely unbothered. You better hope a miracle happens by Friday. Now get out of my sight. Andre stares at me, horrified. You are a monster, he hisses, taking a step back. You are going to let our parents lose their home over your petty jealousy. You are dead to me. He turns violently, his foot catching on the heavy wooden leg of the chair beside him. The chair tips over and crashes onto the floor with a loud bang. He does not stop to pick it up. He storms out of the bistro, pushing past a group of frightened hostesses, and disappears into the busy city street. The restaurant remains perfectly still for a long moment. I pick up my linen napkin, gently dab the corners of my mouth, and signal the waiter for the check. As I wait, I pull my phone from my designer bag. I do not feel guilt. I do not feel fear. I feel an absolute laser-focused clarity. The universe just handed me the exact weapon I need to dismantle their empire of lies, and I am not going to waste a single second. I dial the private number of my corporate attorney. She answers on the second ring. Chloe, I say, my voice steady and commanding. Drop whatever you are working on right now. I need you to find out exactly which regional bank holds the commercial note on Andre Washington's luxury concierge storefront. There is a brief pause on the line as Chloe types rapidly on her keyboard. Consider it done, Zaria. What is the play? I look down at the soggy, rejected loan application still sitting on my table. I want to buy the debt, I tell her. All of it. I am sitting on my velvet sofa staring at the muted television when Chloe calls back less than 2 hours later. My attorney does not waste time with pleasantries. The moment I answer, she gets straight to the point. Zaria, the commercial note on your brother's storefront is held by Crestview Regional, but that is barely scratching the surface of what I just found. Chloe says, her voice tight with professional disbelief. I pulled the property records on your parents' house. Silas and Patricia have taken out 3 separate high-interest secondary mortgages over the last 4 years. The equity is entirely gone. They are drowning. I let out a slow, heavy breath, leaning back against the cushions. 3 secondary mortgages. My mind races back to every single time my mother Patricia bragged at church about the Lord blessing them with financial overflow. She wore custom-tailored suits to Sunday service, her matching hats always blocking the view of whoever sat behind her. She hosted lavish garden parties for the deacon board, hiring expensive catering staff to serve caviar and champagne, while I was downstairs in the damp basement fixing the plumbing myself to save them money. All of that incredible wealth was an absolute mirage, funded entirely by predatory lenders and my monthly rent checks. Chloe continues outlining the sheer scale of the disaster. Crestview Regional bundled the commercial loan with the secondary residential mortgages because your father used the house as a cross-collateral guarantee. Andre's business is legally and permanently tied to your parents' living room. The bank categorized this as a severely distressed asset months ago. They are highly motivated to offload the entire portfolio for pennies on the dollar just to get the toxic debt off their books. They want out of the Silas Washington business immediately. Buy it, I say, without a single second of hesitation. Use Onyx Holdings. I want to own the paper on Andre's business and Silas's house by the end of the week. I am already drafting the acquisition offer, Chloe replies, the rapid clicking of her keyboard echoing through the phone. But there is something else, Zaria. While I was running the background check on the family's financial footprint to ensure Onyx Holdings would have clean title to the debt, I found a massive anomaly attached to your social security number. My blood runs completely cold. My grip on the phone tightens. What anomaly? A personal unsecured loan for $15,000 originated exactly 3 years ago through a subprime lender. Chloe explains, her tone shifting from professional to fiercely protective. The payments have been sporadic, mostly late. It was taken out in your name, but the funds were deposited directly into a joint checking account owned by Silas and Patricia. Zaria, did you sign for this? The absolute audacity of my own flesh and blood leaves me momentarily speechless. 3 years ago. I immediately calculate the timeline in my head. 3 years ago was exactly when Andre proposed to Madison. I remember their lavish engagement party vividly. It was hosted at a country club we had no business being in. Madison had shoved her left hand into the face of every single relative, flashing a massive, flawless diamond ring that caught the light from every angle. Andre had puffed out his chest wearing a custom tuxedo, claiming his luxury concierge business was booming, and he wanted his future wife to have the absolute best because she deserved nothing less. Patricia had looked at me during that party, her eyes dripping with pure condescension. She pulled me aside near the dessert table and told me that if I learned to dress better and stopped hiding behind a computer screen writing useless code, a man might buy me a ring like that one day. She told me I needed to learn how to present myself like Madison if I ever wanted to be valued. They did not just insult me, they stole my identity to buy the very ring they used to humiliate me. They ruined my credit to fund a white woman's entitlement while telling their black daughter she was fundamentally unworthy of being loved properly. I never signed that document, I tell Chloe, my voice dangerously calm, vibrating with a cold, calculated fury. They forged my signature. They stole my identity to finance a diamond for a woman who just mocked me for living in a flooded basement. That is felony wire fraud and identity theft, Chloe states firmly. If we report this to the authorities, your parents could face actual prison time. We can press charges today. I walk over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city traffic moving like tiny ants far below my penthouse. Reporting them to the police would be far too easy. It would allow them to play the victims. They would stand in front of the church congregation weeping, claiming their cruel, ungrateful daughter put them behind bars over a simple misunderstanding. No, I want something far more precise. I want to systematically dismantle their pride. I want to strip away every single layer of the fake wealth they built by stepping on my neck. File the forgery evidence away. For now, I instruct Chloe, watching the reflection of my own unsmiling face in the glass. We will use it as leverage when the time is absolutely perfect. Right now, I want Onyx Holdings to consume their debt. I want absolute financial control over their entire lives. The next morning, I am drinking my matcha latte when the building concierge sends up my mail. Amidst the usual corporate correspondence is a thick, heavy envelope embossed with gold foil. I slice it open with a silver letter opener. It is an exclusive, highly restricted invitation to the Vanguard Tech Incubator Charity Gala happening this Friday night. I smile, tracing the gold lettering. The organizers invited me because they know exactly who I am. I recently made a massive anonymous donation to their inner city youth coding initiative through Elias. They know I am the newly minted 8-figure tech founder they desperately want sitting on their board of directors. I also know for an absolute fact that Andre and Madison will be there. Andre considers himself a high-rolling entrepreneur. He spends thousands of dollars buying tickets to these elite charity galas, just so he can rub elbows with real venture capitalists. He uses these events to hunt for targets, hoping to scam some wealthy investor into pouring cash into his sinking luxury concierge fleet. Madison will be right by his side, dripping in designer labels funded by my stolen credit and my parents' mortgaged home, pretending she belongs among the city's wealthy elite. This Friday is the exact deadline Andre mentioned while throwing his temper tantrum at the coffee shop, the day his landlord promised to lock the doors of his storefront. The day the bank is scheduled to call in the loan that will ultimately destroy Silas and Patricia. I pick up my phone and dial Chloe again. The gala is Friday night, I tell her, my voice brimming with dark anticipation. I want the Onyx Holdings acquisition finalized by Friday afternoon. No delays, no extensions, no excuses. Wire the bank whatever premium they require to expedite the transfer of the debt. Throw money at the problem until it goes away. The paperwork will be ready for your final biometric signature by Friday at 5 o'clock sharp, Chloe confirms confidently. You are going to own their entire world before the sun goes down. Perfect, I reply. Have the final default notices drafted and ready to deploy the second my signature clears. I end the call and toss the gold-embossed invitation onto my marble coffee table. For 33 years, my family treated me like an invisible stepping stone. They drained my savings, stole my identity, and demanded my silence so they could shine in the spotlight of their church community. They think I am currently sleeping on a friend's worn-out couch, crying over a $2,500 rent hike. They think they have won the game. They have no idea the rules just changed. I walk toward my massive walk-in closet, running my hand along the rows of pristine, custom-tailored garments. I have an entire room full of clothes, but none of them feel quite lethal enough for the stage I am about to step onto. I need something that commands absolute authority. I grab my purse and my black titanium card. I am going shopping. The flashbulbs from the local press illuminate the grand entrance of the museum hall as I step out of the black town car. The Vanguard Tech Incubator Charity Gala is the most exclusive event of the season, a sprawling playground for the city's billionaires, venture capitalists, and political elite. Tonight, I am not the quiet girl hiding in a flooded basement. I am wearing a custom emerald green silk gown that hugs every curve and flows to the polished marble floor like liquid glass. The fabric alone costs more than the car Andre crashed in college. I walk past the velvet ropes with absolute authority, handing my gold-embossed invitation to the event coordinator. She scans the barcode, her eyes widening slightly, and addresses me with immediate hushed reverence. I glide into the main ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the sea of tailored tuxedos and designer dresses. Waiters in crisp white jackets circulate with heavy silver trays of champagne. I decline the alcohol, taking a glass of sparkling water instead. I need my mind to remain razor sharp. It takes me exactly 4 minutes to spot my prey. Andre and Madison are standing near the silent auction tables, practically vibrating with desperate, unearned arrogance. Andre is wearing a rented tuxedo that is just a fraction too tight across his broad shoulders. He has cornered a well-known angel investor, aggressively thrusting his cheap foil-stamped business cards into the man's hand. I can see the nervous sweat glistening on Andre's forehead under the bright ballroom lights. He is loudly pitching his luxury lifestyle concierge business, completely oblivious to the fact that the commercial lease he is currently bragging about is sitting in a digital file on my lawyer's desk marked for immediate and total foreclosure. Madison stands right beside him, playing the role of the supportive, wealthy wife. She is dripping in flashy labels, wearing a heavily branded dress that screams for attention among the quiet luxury of the actual billionaires in the room. On her left hand, catching the light from the massive chandeliers, rests the flawless diamond ring, the $15,000 ring bought with my stolen Social Security number. The ring that ruined my credit score for 2 years while I was desperately trying to bootstrap my software company. She waves that hand around as she speaks, making sure everyone in a 10-foot radius sees the physical proof of her manufactured status. I take a slow sip of my water, watching them perform their desperate little play. They are a house of cards waiting for a single gust of wind. Madison turns her head to signal a passing waiter, and that is when she finally sees me. For a fraction of a second, the arrogant smirk slides right off her face. Her pale skin turns completely ashen. She blinks hard as if she cannot process the sight of the sister-in-law. She constantly degrades, standing in the center of the most exclusive ballroom in the city, wearing a dress that commands absolute silence. She taps Andre frantically on the arm, pointing a sharp manicured finger in my direction. Andre looks over, his jaw dropping open. He actually takes a physical step backward, bumping heavily into a high-top cocktail table. A smart person would have turned around and walked away. A smart person would have realized that a black woman they kicked out into the rain a week ago does not magically appear at an elite investor gala by accident. But Madison is not smart. She is blindingly entitled. And entitlement breeds a very specific destructive kind of reckless stupidity. Instead of retreating, Madison squares her shoulders and lifts her chin. She thrives on public humiliation. It is the exact same psychological tactic my mother Patricia has used for decades at our family church. Whenever I achieved anything independent of their control, they would corner me in front of an audience and mock me until I shrank back into my designated subservient corner. Madison clearly thinks this outdated strategy will work tonight. She grabs Andre by the arm, forcing him to follow her across the ballroom floor. But she does not come alone. Madison intentionally flags down Deacon Barnes and his wife, two of the most prominent gossip-hungry members of Silas's church congregation, who are attending the gala on a community outreach ticket. She also manages to bring along the angel investor Andre was just pitching to. She wants a captive audience for my destruction. I stand my ground near a towering floral arrangement, watching the firing squad approach with utter calm. Zaria, Madison announces, her voice carrying a loud, grating pitch specifically designed to draw the attention of the surrounding wealthy guests. "What on earth are you doing here? Did the catering company run out of staff for the evening? Or did you figure out a way to sneak through the service entrance?" Deacon Barnes shifts uncomfortably in his tuxedo, glancing nervously between me and Madison. Andre is sweating profusely now, looking around the room as if expecting a team of security guards to rush in and drag me out by my hair. I do not say a single word. I just look at her, letting the heavy silence stretch out, making her profoundly uncomfortable. Madison steps closer, emboldened by my silence, foolishly assuming it is fear. She reaches out and pinches the silk sleeve of my emerald gown between her thumb and forefinger, her nose wrinkling in exaggerated theatrical disgust. Renting designer clothes for a single night is a terrible financial decision for someone who just threw a temper tantrum and got evicted from a basement Zaria. You should be using that rental money to pay your parents the back rent you owe them. Or better yet, you should be helping your brother fund his rapidly expanding business instead of crashing elite parties where you clearly do not belong. The angel investor raises a gray eyebrow, clearly taken aback by the sudden, unprovoked hostility. Deacon Barnes clears his throat, attempting to play his usual role of the righteous peacemaker. "Now, Madison, let us remember grace. Zaria, your father has been very worried about your spiritual state since you abandoned your family responsibilities last week. The Lord watches how we treat our family. This is the exact suffocating dynamic that has kept me in chains for 33 years, the unified front of family and church community, weaponizing guilt, religious shame, and public embarrassment to enforce my absolute submission. They expect me to lower my head, mumble a tearful apology, and scurry out the back doors in shame. They expect me to be the broken compliant safety net they can continue to step on forever. But the woman standing in this emerald gown does not break. The woman standing in this emerald gown owns the very ground they are walking on. I smile. It is not a defensive, nervous smile. It is a brilliant, genuinely warm, and terrifyingly calm smile. The kind of smile a predator gives right before the steel trap snaps shut. I do not raise my voice. I do not defend my presence at the gala. I do not explain that I am a VIP guest, or that I could buy and sell everyone standing in this little circle 10 times over before breakfast. I simply take one deliberate step forward, completely closing the distance between Madison and myself, invading her personal space. "Oh, Madison," I say, my voice smooth as glass, dripping with manufactured sugary sweetness. "I am not here to cause a scene. I just had to come over and tell you how absolutely stunning you look tonight." Madison blinks rapidly, completely thrown off balance by the unexpected compliment. Her defensive posture falters for a split second, her eyes searching mine for the trap. I slowly lower my gaze, letting my eyes drop from her confused face, down to the flashy, oversized, heavily branded designer handbag she is clutching tightly against her hip like a shield. I reach out my hand, extending a single finger, and point directly at it. I tap my manicured nail lightly against the oversized gold buckle of Madison's heavily branded handbag. The metallic clink rings out sharply over the low hum of the ballroom string quartet. Madison physically recoils, pulling the bag tight against her chest, as if my very touch might contaminate it. "I love vintage pieces," I say, my voice ringing with absolute clarity. The uneven nylon thread along the bottom seam is a dead giveaway of a classic Canal Street fake. It is a very brave choice for a tech incubator gala, Madison. The circle of people around us freezes entirely. The angel investor raises his champagne flute, pausing halfway to his mouth. Deacon Barnes and his wife exchange a rapid, scandalized glance. In our church community, wearing counterfeit luxury while boasting about wealth is considered the ultimate sin of pretending to be something you are clearly not. Madison turns a blotchy shade of crimson. Her jaw drops open. "How dare you?" she hisses, her voice dropping into an ugly, defensive pitch. "This bag cost more than your car, Zaria. It is authentic imported leather." I let out a soft, melodic laugh. "Madison, darling, authentic leather does not smell like industrial polyurethane glue. And the luxury design house you are attempting to emulate stopped using stamped brass hardware in 2012. The logo placement on your front flap is completely asymmetrical. It is off-center by at least half an inch. You can literally see exactly where the factory machine slipped." Andre steps forward, trying to puff out his chest to shield his wife. "You do not know what you are talking about, Zaria," he snaps, trying to keep his voice low so the angel investor does not hear his rising panic. "You have never owned a designer item in your entire life. You are embarrassing yourself. Go back to your basement." I do not back down. I step closer to my older brother, invading his personal space. "You are absolutely right, Andre," I say, my tone dripping with pure ice. "I never owned a single authentic designer item growing up. Do you want to tell these fine people exactly why that is?" Andre swallows hard. The heavy sweat on his forehead is visible now, gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. "Since my brother is suddenly feeling shy, I will happily explain," I announce, addressing the angel investor and the church gossips directly. "I know exactly how to spot a cheap imitation because I spent my entire childhood forced to wear them. Every single August, our parents, Silas and Patricia, would take the family back to school shopping. They would drop $500 in a single afternoon buying Andre authentic limited edition Jordans so the golden child could look wealthy, walking the halls of his high school. Then my father would drive me to a discount flea market on the other side of town. He would buy me knockoff sneakers with the glue still wet and fake designer backpacks with misspelled logos." Deacon Barnes gasps, softly clutching his wife's arm. My words are systematically shattering the illusion of the flawless, generous Washington family they have worshipped for decades. I keep my eyes locked on Andre. "My parents told me that because I was just a girl, I did not need to represent the family legacy. They said nobody was looking at me anyway. They taught me how to study the stitching on fake bags because that was the only standard they believed I deserved. So you see, Madison, I have a lifetime of personal experience identifying cheap, fragile things pretending to be valuable. The silence that follows my speech is heavy and suffocating. The angel investor lets out a low, stifled chuckle, turning his head to hide his genuine amusement. Mrs. Barnes brings a hand to her mouth, trying and failing to hide a blatant smirk. The humiliation is absolute and completely public. Madison looks frantically around the small circle of elites, realizing that everyone is staring at her cheap handbag with blatant disgust. The carefully constructed illusion of her wealthy upper-crust lifestyle has been entirely obliterated in under 2 minutes by the very woman she came over to mock. Her face flushes a deep, violently angry red. Tears of pure mortification spring to her eyes. She lets out a choked, humiliated sob, turns on her designer heel and flees. She pushes her way through the crowd of billionaires and venture capitalists, practically running toward the ballroom restrooms to hide her face. Andre is left standing completely alone, holding his cheap foil-stamped business cards. He looks at the angel investor, offering a desperate, sweaty smile. "My wife is just feeling a little under the weather," he stammers, attempting to salvage the networking opportunity. "About my luxury concierge fleet, sir, I would love to send you a proposal." The angel investor looks Andre up and down with an expression of pure icy disdain. "I do not do business with men who dress their wives in plastic," he says smoothly. "Good evening to you." The investor turns and walks away, without a single backward glance. Deacon Barnes and his wife quickly excuse themselves, desperate to run to the nearest corner of the ballroom and text the rest of the church congregation about the spectacular downfall of Silas Washington's arrogant son and his counterfeit wife. Andre glares at me, his fists clenched at his sides. "You ruined everything," he hisses, his voice trembling with rage. "You are going to pay for this, Zaria. I swear to God I will make you pay." He turns and chases after his crying wife, weaving desperately through the crowd of people who are now actively avoiding his gaze. I stand alone near the towering floral arrangement, taking a slow, steadying breath. My heart is beating with the steady, powerful rhythm. I did not raise my voice. I did not lose my temper. I simply held up a mirror to their fake reality and let the absolute truth shatter them. The air inside the ballroom suddenly feels too warm, too suffocating. I turn away from the glittering crowd and walk through a set of heavy glass double doors, stepping out onto a quiet private balcony. The cool night air hits my face, instantly refreshing my spirit. The city skyline stretches out before me, a vast ocean of glowing lights and towering skyscrapers. Down there, millions of people are rushing through their lives, completely unaware of the massive shift in power happening right above them. My clutch vibrates. I pull out my phone. The screen illuminates the darkness of the balcony. It is a secure, encrypted text message from my corporate attorney, Chloe. "The paperwork is ready. We are at the final deadline, awaiting your biometric authorization to execute the transfer." I lean against the cold stone railing of the balcony. I open the highly secure legal portal on my phone. The digital documents load instantly. They are dense, filled with complex financial terminology, but the summary at the top is beautifully simple. An absolute and total transfer of distressed debt from Crestview Regional Bank to Onyx Holdings. I am staring at the commercial lease for Andre's flashy luxury concierge storefront. I am staring at the secondary mortgages on Silas and Patricia's pristine suburban home. The very home where they charged me $2,500 to live in a moldy basement. The home they leveraged to finance Madison's fake lifestyle while telling me I was fundamentally unworthy of basic provision. The screen prompts me for my final authorization. Place thumb here to execute contract. I do not hesitate for a single second. I press my thumb against the glowing sensor on the screen. A green checkmark flashes across the display, followed by a notification banner that reads, "Transfer complete. Funds disbursed." I lock my phone and slip it back into my designer clutch. A slow, genuine smile spreads across my face. I look out over the glittering city, feeling the incredible, intoxicating weight of absolute control. I did not just ruin their networking opportunity tonight. Onyx Holdings is now the sole legal owner of the debt attached to my brother's business and my parents' house. I literally own the roof over their heads. The game is entirely mine now. Exactly 48 hours after my thumb pressed that glowing sensor on my phone screen, the reality of Onyx Holdings slams into my brother's life with the force of a freight train. It is Wednesday morning. I am sitting in my home office reviewing the quarterly financial projections for my new corporate advisory role when my attorney Chloe sends me a secure message. The courier just handed the thick manila envelope directly to Andre. The notice of default is not a polite warning or a gentle reminder of past due balances. I explicitly instructed Chloe to use the most aggressive, legally ironclad language permissible under state law. The document details the immediate acceleration of his commercial loan, the total default status of his luxury storefront lease, and the impending seizure of all collateral tied to the debt. That collateral, of course, is the very house my parents sleep in every single night. Chloe tells me the courier reported that Andre physically dropped the heavy stack of paperwork onto the sidewalk and started screaming at a passing parking enforcement officer in pure blind panic. The dominoes I so carefully set up are officially falling. The fallout takes exactly 3 hours to reach my phone. When the screen lights up with my mother's contact photo, I let it ring 3 times before picking up just to set the pace of the interaction. Zaria Patricia breathes heavily into the receiver the second I answer. Her voice is trembling and shaking with a manufactured terror, but beneath the theatrics I can hear the familiar demanding steel of a woman who expects absolute obedience from her daughter. You need to come to the church rectory immediately. We are under spiritual attack. A faceless corporate landlord called Onyx Holdings just sent a demonic eviction notice to your brother. They are trying to steal his livelihood and our home. The devil is working through these greedy corporations to destroy our family legacy. We are holding an emergency intervention. You need to be here right now. I do not laugh, though it takes every ounce of my willpower to hold the sound inside my chest. The utter irony of my mother calling my holding company a demonic entity while sitting in a church built on the tithes of hardworking people she judges every Sunday as rich. I remember the last time she summoned me to the rectory for an emergency family intervention. I was 24 years old. Andre had maxed out a high-interest credit card he secretly opened in my name, destroying my credit score right as I was applying for my first independent apartment. Silas and Patricia dragged me into the pastor's office and used scripture to browbeat me into forgiving my brother and absorbing the massive debt to protect his pristine future. They weaponized my faith to shield their golden boy from the consequences of identity theft. They told me a good sister suffers in silence so her brother can walk in the light. Not today, I will be there. I tell her, my voice completely flat, giving away nothing of the storm brewing behind my eyes. I hang up the phone and walk directly to my sprawling walk-in closet. I deliberately bypass the designer silk blouses, the tailored Italian blazers, and the expensive leather pumps. I need to maintain my cover perfectly. I need them to believe I am exactly who they think I am. An evicted, broke, desperate woman who just lost her basement room and has nowhere else to turn. I pull on a pair of simple dark jeans, a plain beige knit sweater, and a scuffed pair of ankle boots. I grab my keys and head down to the high-security parking garage, bypassing the spot where I plan to park my future luxury SUV and sliding into the driver's seat of my unassuming 5-year-old sedan. The drive to the church takes 20 minutes. The heavy gray clouds hanging overhead mirror the suffocating atmosphere of the neighborhood I grew up in. I navigate the familiar streets feeling a strange sense of detachment. I am no longer the terrified girl who used to shrink under the weight of her parents' expectations. I pull into the massive paved parking lot of Greater Hope Fellowship. My father, Silas, is a senior deacon here, a man who absolutely loves the sound of his own voice echoing off the towering stained glass windows. He uses his church title to command unquestioned respect from the local community, hiding his severe financial negligence behind expensive tailored suits and large, highly visible public donations. I park my unremarkable car between a row of shiny luxury vehicles, knowing for a fact that at least 2 of them belong to Pastor Williams and my father. I walk up the wide concrete steps, my boots clicking a steady rhythm against the pavement. The heavy wooden doors of the church creak loudly as I pull them open. The air inside smells exactly as I remember, a suffocating blend of lemon floor wax, old paper hymnals, and the lingering scent of heavy floral perfume from Sunday service. The long hallway leading to the administrative offices is dead quiet. I walk past the dark, empty sanctuary, not rushing, not dragging my feet, simply moving with the calm, unstoppable momentum of a glacier. I reach the frosted glass door of the main rectory office. The gold lettering on the glass reads Senior Pastor. I do not knock. I reach out, turn the cold brass handle, and push the door wide open. The tension inside the room is so thick and volatile it could shatter glass. I step over the threshold and immediately realize this is not just a panicked family meeting. It is a fully orchestrated, heavily populated ambush designed to trap me. My mother, Patricia, is sitting in the corner, clutching a damp tissue to her chest, playing the role of the devastated, weeping matriarch to absolute perfection. Andre is pacing the length of the floor, running his trembling hands over his face, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. His usual arrogant swagger has been entirely erased by the terrifying reality of the Onyx Holdings default notice. Madison is perched nervously on the edge of a tufted leather sofa, glaring at me with red, puffy eyes, her counterfeit designer bag clutched tightly in her lap like a shield. But they are not alone. Sitting behind the massive, imposing oak desk is Pastor Williams, his hands steepled together under his chin, his face carved into a rigid mask of deep, righteous disappointment. Flanking him on either side are three of the most senior church elders, older, stern men who have known me since I was a child in Sunday school. Silas stands right in the center of the room, his arms crossed over his chest, waiting for me with a look of absolute authority. They have deliberately assembled the highest spiritual and social authority in their entire world to force me into total financial submission. The room is designed to make me feel small, outnumbered, and morally obligated to obey whatever command they are about to issue. They are looking at me not like a daughter or a sister, but like a disposable resource they are about to harvest to save themselves. They have absolutely no idea that the faceless corporate predator they are praying to defeat just walked right through their front door and is currently staring them dead in the eye. The heavy oak door of the rectory office clicks shut behind me, the sound echoing like a prison cell locking into place. I remain standing just inside the threshold, my posture perfectly straight, my hands relaxed at my sides. Pastor Williams sits behind his massive desk, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. He wears a tailored suit that costs more than the monthly tithes of half his congregation combined. The three church elders flank him, their faces arranged in identical expressions of pious disappointment. "Take a seat," Zaria Pastor Williams says, gesturing to a single hard wooden chair positioned dead center in the room. It is a physical interrogation tactic designed to make me feel small, isolated, and entirely surrounded by male authority. "I prefer to stand," I reply, my voice smooth and utterly devoid of the intimidation they expect. Pastor Williams sighs heavily, exchanging a deeply burdened look with my father. Silas steps forward, his chest puffed out, radiating the performative authority he wields as a senior deacon. "We called you here today because this family is under a severe spiritual attack." Pastor Williams begins, his baritone voice slipping effortlessly into his Sunday sermon cadence. "The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Right now, he is operating through a faceless, greedy corporate landlord called Onyx Holdings. They have sent a wicked, unjustified eviction notice to your brother. They are threatening the commercial property that houses his business, and by extension, they are threatening the very home your parents have graciously provided for you." I look at Andre. He is sweating, pacing near the bookshelf, chewing aggressively on his thumbnail. Patricia sits on the leather sofa, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue, nodding along to the pastor's dramatic narrative. Family is a sacred bond instituted by God. Pastor Williams continues, standing up and leaning over his desk to look down at me. "When one member of the body suffers, we all suffer. When your brother is attacked by corporate vultures, it is your Christian duty to stand in the gap." Silas steps right into my personal space, his imposing figure meant to force me to back down. He does not ask, he commands. "We need a retainer for a high-powered real estate litigation attorney by the end of the business day." Silas states, his voice hard and uncompromising. "We know you have a measly savings account from that little budgeting app you have been playing with. You do not have a husband. You do not have children. You have no real financial obligations. You will empty that account today and transfer every single penny to my name so I can hire legal counsel to fight Onyx Holdings. The absolute breathtaking delusion in his eyes is staggering. He genuinely believes he has the divine right to reach into my bank account and drain my life savings to cover up his catastrophic financial negligence. He expects me to finance a legal war against a multi-million-dollar holding company using the pennies he assumes I saved from skipping my daily coffee. I look around the room. I look at the 3 church elders who have known me since I was 7 years old, men who are sitting in silence, fully supporting a father, demanding his daughter bankrupt herself for her older brother. I smile. It is a slow, chilling expression that causes the elders to shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Where was this righteous spiritual intervention 3 years ago? I ask, my voice ringing with a sudden razor-sharp clarity that cuts right through their holy facade. Pastor Williams frowns, clearly thrown off the script he had prepared. What are you talking about, Zaria? This is about the current crisis threatening your family. I keep my eyes locked entirely on my father. No, I say, my tone dropping to a dangerous, steady calm. I want to know where the prayer circle was when my father forced me out of my childhood bedroom. I want to know where the church elders were when Silas moved me into a dark, unventilated basement infested with toxic black mold. I was coughing up blood for 2 months. I asked my father to pay for a professional mold remediation service, and he told me the family had no money to spare. Patricia gasps loudly from the sofa, clutching her pearls. Zaria, how dare you bring up family business in front of the pastor? I ignore her completely, taking a step closer to Silas. You told me we had no money, Dad. Yet that exact same week you paid contractors $10,000 to rip down the walls of the master suite so Andre could have a custom-built gaming studio. You compromised my respiratory health and forced me to sleep in a biohazard so your 30-year-old golden boy could play video games in luxury. Nobody prayed over my lungs then. Nobody called an emergency meeting to protect me. The silence in the rectory office is deafening. The church elders stare at the floor, suddenly finding the pattern of the oriental rug incredibly interesting. Pastor Williams clears his throat, attempting to regain control of the narrative. We are not here to discuss past grievances, Zaria. The pastor stammers, his authoritative tone wavering. We are here to address the demonic force trying to seize your parents' home. You are being selfish and harboring unforgiveness in your heart. Before I can verbally dismantle the pastor, Madison completely loses her mind. The stress of the Onyx Holdings default notice has clearly broken whatever fragile grip she had on reality. She is watching her fake, counterfeit luxury lifestyle evaporate right before her eyes. The prospect of losing her status, her shopping sprees, and the illusion of wealth has driven her into a state of sheer, unhinged panic. She leaps up from the leather sofa, her face twisted into an ugly, furious sneer. You jealous, bitter spinster! Madison screams at the top of her lungs, her shrill voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls. She grabs a heavy crystal glass of ice water sitting on the edge of the pastor's desk. Without a single second of hesitation, she hurls the freezing water directly into my face. The shock of the ice-cold water hits me, soaking my hair, dripping down my eyelashes, and freezing the collar of my beige knit sweater. The ice cubes clatter loudly against the hardwood floor. Madison points a shaking, manicured finger right at my chest, her chest heaving as she completely unravels. You are doing this on purpose. You are purposely withholding your pathetic little savings just to punish us. You want Andre to fail because no man will ever look at you. You are trying to ruin my marriage because you are going to die alone in a moldy basement. You are nothing but a jealous failure who wants everyone else to be as miserable as you are. The room freezes. The blatant physical assault hangs in the air. I do not flinch. I do not raise my hands to protect myself. I do not scream back. I stand perfectly still, letting the freezing water drip from my chin onto the floor. I slowly reach into the pocket of my jeans and pull out a monogrammed silk handkerchief. With slow, methodical, deliberate movements, I dab the water from my eyes. I wipe the moisture from my cheeks. I turn my head slowly and look directly at my father. I look at the man who is supposed to be my protector, the man who holds a position of moral authority in this community. I wait for him to reprimand his daughter-in-law. I wait for him to step between us. I wait for a father to defend his own flesh and blood after a physical attack in a house of worship. Silas looks at my soaking wet sweater. He looks at Madison, who is still breathing heavily, her fists clenched at her sides. Then he looks right into my eyes with a gaze of pure, freezing contempt. "Do not look at me for sympathy," Silas says, his voice completely devoid of any paternal warmth. "You brought that on yourself, Zaria. You deserved it for your blatant disrespect and your disobedience." The freezing water seeps through the beige knit of my sweater, pressing a cold, uncomfortable dampness against my skin. But the chill of the water is absolutely nothing compared to the freezing, deadened stare of my father. I look at Silas, a man who has stood at the pulpit of Greater Hope Fellowship for 20 years, preaching about grace, protection, and unconditional love. He is looking at me as if I am a piece of trash that someone tracked into his pristine rectory on the bottom of their shoe. He just watched my sister-in-law physically assault me in a house of worship, and his only response was to tell me I deserved it for stepping out of line. A heavy, suffocating silence descends upon the room. The three church elders sit perfectly still in their high-backed leather chairs. These are men who have known me since I was a little girl in Sunday school. They watched me memorize scripture. They watched me grow up. And right now they are staring at the intricate patterns of the oriental rug, completely complicit in my abuse. They will not speak against a senior deacon, especially not to defend a woman who is refusing to submit to the financial demands of the family patriarch. Madison stands near the edge of the desk, her chest heaving as she clutches her empty crystal glass. A smug, victorious smirk begins to pull at the corners of her mouth. She genuinely believes she has won. She thinks that putting her hands on me and getting away with it has solidified her place at the top of the family hierarchy. Andre stands beside her, running a hand over his freshly lined-up haircut, looking relieved that the target is firmly locked onto my back instead of his own massive, catastrophic failures. Silas takes a slow, deliberate step forward, planting his feet firmly into the carpet. He squares his shoulders, puffing out his chest to project maximum authority. He is preparing to deliver the final blow, the ultimate command, designed to break my spirit and force my complete surrender. "You have lost your way," Zaria Silas booms, his voice echoing off the dark wood paneling of the office walls. "You have allowed arrogance and a rebellious spirit to poison your mind. You think because you live alone and work on your little computer that you do not have to answer to the authority of this family. You have forgotten who gave you life. You have forgotten who provided for you." I do not blink. I do not wipe the remaining drops of water from my jaw. I just let him speak, analyzing the sheer terrifying depth of his narcissism. "Your brother is facing a crisis that threatens the very foundation of the Washington legacy." Silas continues, gesturing grandly toward Andre. "Andre is the firstborn son. He is the one who carries our name into the future. Madison is his wife, and she deserves to be treated with the utmost respect, not subjected to your bitter, jealous outbursts. We are in a state of emergency, and you are playing selfish games with your money." Silas leans forward, placing his heavy hands on the back of the wooden chair I refuse to sit in. "Here is what is going to happen today, Zaria. This is not a request. This is a directive from the head of this household. You will apologize to Madison right now for your disrespect. Then you will open your banking application and you will transfer every single dollar of your savings into my personal account. I will manage the funds. I will hire the real estate attorneys to fight this Onyx Holdings company, and I will ensure your brother's business remains open." He pauses, letting the weight of his demands settle over the room. He wants me to strip myself bare. He wants me to apologize to the woman who just threw ice water in my face, and then he wants me to finance her luxury lifestyle while I walk away with nothing. "And if you refuse," Silas says, his voice dropping into a low, menacing register, "if you choose your own selfish pride over the survival of your flesh and blood, then you leave me no choice. You will give your brother everything you have, or you are no longer a daughter of this house. You will pack whatever belongings you have left, and you will never contact us again. You will not come to Sunday service. You will not attend family gatherings. You will be dead to us." The ultimatum hangs in the air, sharp and absolute. It is the nuclear option. For a black family deeply entrenched in church culture and respectability politics, being officially cut off and disowned is the ultimate social and spiritual death sentence. Silas expects this threat to shatter me. He expects me to fall to my knees, weeping, begging for forgiveness, terrified of the isolation he is promising. I slowly turn my head to look at my mother. Patricia is sitting perfectly upright on the leather sofa. This is the woman who carried me for 9 months. This is the woman who watched me work 3 jobs to pay for a college education she refused to fund. I look into her eyes, searching for a single ounce of maternal instinct, a single shred of protective love. "Do you agree with this?" I ask her, my voice unnervingly calm. Patricia does not hesitate. She lifts her chin, her face set in a mask of rigid, unyielding pride. She reaches up with a manicured hand and deliberately adjusts the heavy string of pearls around her neck. "A house divided against itself cannot stand, Zaria," Patricia says coldly, quoting scripture to justify her cruelty. "You have always been difficult. You have always refused to fit in and support your brother the way a good sister should. You have made Madison feel unwelcome with your constant silent judgment. Your father is right. Choose your family, or choose isolation. I stand by my husband. The rejection is absolute. It is total, uncompromising, and permanent. And it is the most beautiful, liberating thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. For 33 years, I have carried the crushing, suffocating weight of their expectations. I have twisted myself into knots trying to earn a fraction of the love they poured endlessly into Andre. I accepted the moldy basement. I accepted the financial abuse. I accepted the quiet daily humiliations just to keep the peace, believing that eventually they would see my value. But standing here dripping wet in a church office, looking at the unified front of my abusers, the heavy, invisible chains around my neck simply snap. I do not feel sorrow. I do not feel heartbreak. I feel a massive, soaring sense of pure, unadulterated freedom. They have just handed me the exact permission I needed to destroy them without a single ounce of guilt. I reach down and smooth the damp fabric of my sweater. I brush a stray drop of water from the denim of my jeans. I stand up a little taller, squaring my shoulders, pulling my posture into perfect royal alignment. I look at Silas. I look at Patricia. I look at Andre, who is shifting nervously from foot to foot, and I look at Madison, whose smug smile is beginning to falter under the weight of my unwavering composure. "I accept your terms," I say, my voice ringing out clear, bright, and completely steady. Pastor Williams gasps softly. The church elders exchange shocked, wide-eyed glances. This is not the script. This is not how the intervention is supposed to go. "What did you say?" Silas demands, his heavy brow furrowing in confusion. "I said I accept your terms," I repeat, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the door. I will not apologize to a woman who wears counterfeit bags and throws tantrums like a toddler. I will not give a single penny of my money to a brother who cannot even pay his own car insurance. And I will certainly not finance a legal battle to save a family that treats me like a disposable asset. "Zaria, do not be a fool!" Patricia snaps, standing up from the sofa. "You have nothing without us. You have nowhere to go." I offer my mother a chilling, radiant smile. "You have absolutely no idea what I have, Patricia. But you are about to find out. I am no longer your daughter. I am no longer a member of this church. I am completely, legally, and permanently done with all of you." I turn my back on them. I reach out and grab the heavy brass handle of the rectory door. "You walk out that door and you are dead to me," Silas roars, his voice echoing violently through the small office. "Do you hear me? Dead." I pull the door open and step out into the long, quiet hallway of the church. I do not look back. I do not hesitate. I listen to the sound of my boots clicking against the polished floor, the steady, rhythmic beat of a woman marching toward her empire. I push open the heavy front doors of Greater Hope Fellowship and step out into the cool gray afternoon. The cold air hits my damp sweater, but I do not shiver. My blood is running hot with pure adrenaline. I walk across the massive parking lot, ignoring the luxury vehicles belonging to the men who just tried to break me. I reach my unassuming 5-year-old sedan. I unlock the door and slide into the driver's seat, shutting out the world. The silence inside the car is perfect. I reach into my pocket and pull out my phone. I open the secure encrypted messaging application. I type a message to my corporate attorney, Chloe. My fingers do not tremble. My vision is perfectly clear. I type the words that will execute the final devastating blow to the Washington family legacy. Initiate foreclosure. Send the repo men to Andre's storefront tomorrow at exactly noon. No extensions. I hit send. I drop the phone into the passenger seat, start the engine of my car, and pull out of the church parking lot, leaving the ashes of my former life in the rearview mirror. The dashboard clock in my unassuming sedan clicks to exactly 11:55 in the morning. I am parked legally across the street from my brother's business. The gold leaf lettering on the floor-to-ceiling glass windows reads, Elite Apex Concierge. It is a masterclass in trying entirely too hard. Andre even placed velvet ropes on the public sidewalk to make his leased storefront look like an exclusive nightclub. Right now, he is standing outside the glass doors wearing a tailored navy suit, aggressively pitching his services to a couple dressed in quiet luxury. He is gesturing wildly toward the three pristine black luxury sport utility vehicles parked illegally in the loading zone. Those cars are the entire foundation of his fake empire. I roll my window down just an inch, letting the crisp autumn air into the car. I remember when he first acquired that fleet. Silas made me come over to the family house on a freezing Sunday afternoon to wash and wax all three vehicles by hand. My father claimed it would teach me the value of hard labor, while Andre sat inside drinking hot cider and watching the football game. They wanted the cars to look flawless for a promotional photo shoot, and they refused to pay a professional detailer when they had a perfectly obedient daughter they could force into free labor. Today, the dynamic is permanently reversed. At precisely noon, the deep rattling roar of heavy diesel engines shakes the quiet upscale street. Two massive bright yellow tow trucks turn the corner, their amber lights flashing aggressively. They do not slow down or look for parking. They pull right up onto the curb, angling their heavy steel hydraulic lifts directly toward Andre's pristine fleet. The screech of the air brakes shatters the curated elite atmosphere of the block. Andre stops mid-sentence. The couple he was speaking to takes a startled step back. I watch as the arrogant golden child swagger instantly drains from my brother's posture. He drops his expensive leather portfolio right onto the concrete. "Hey, what are you doing?" Andre shouts, sprinting toward the lead tow truck. "You cannot park here. This is a private loading zone for VIP clients. Move those trucks right now before I call the police." The driver of the lead truck steps out. He is a burly man wearing a grease-stained neon vest, holding a thick metal clipboard. He does not look impressed by the gold leaf lettering or the velvet ropes. He does not care about the Washington family legacy. He walks straight past Andre, dragging a heavy set of metal towing chains across the pavement. The sharp, metallic clanging sounds like absolute music to my ears. "I am not parking," the driver says loudly, his voice carrying easily across the street. "I am repossessing. Stand back, buddy. We have a court order for all three vehicles." Andre's face turns the color of chalk. His eyes dart around frantically, realizing that pedestrians are stopping to stare. The wealthy couple he was just trying to impress is now watching the spectacle with undisguised horror. "There is a mistake," Andre screams, his voice cracking with pure panic. "You have the wrong address. These accounts are current. I just spoke to the leasing office. Do not touch my cars. I will sue your entire company. I will have your badge." The driver laughs, a harsh grating sound. He pulls a heavily stamped legal document from his clipboard and shoves it directly against Andre's chest. "Read it and weep. Default notices were executed 48 hours ago. The debt was acquired by Onyx Holdings, and they ordered immediate asset seizure. Now back away from the hydraulic lift before I call the actual police and have you arrested for obstructing a court-ordered repossession." The mention of Onyx Holdings hits Andre like a physical blow. His knees buckle slightly. He stumbles backwards, staring at the paper in his hands as if it is radioactive. He knows he has no money. He knows Silas cannot bail him out because Silas is currently fighting for his own financial life. The illusion is over. The repo men work with brutal, humiliating efficiency. The hydraulic lifts whine loudly, hoisting the front wheels of the luxury SUVs into the air. The heavy chains lock into place with deafening snaps. Andre just stands there on the sidewalk, his tailored suit hanging off him, watching his entire fake identity being hoisted into the air. Then a sleek black ride-share vehicle pulls up abruptly behind the tow trucks. The back door swings open and Madison steps out. She is holding 3 large shopping bags from a high-end department store, completely oblivious to the chaos, until she looks up and sees a repo man securing a towing strap to the wheels of her favorite luxury vehicle. Madison stops dead in her tracks. The shopping bags slip from her manicured fingers, spilling expensive silk scarves and heavily branded cosmetics all over the dirty sidewalk. "What are you doing?" she shrieks, a high, piercing wail that echoes down the entire block. "Andre, what is happening? Why are they taking our cars? Tell them to stop." Andre cannot even look at her. He covers his face with his hands, turning his back on his wife and his clients. Madison does not handle reality well. Deprived of her counterfeit luxury, she completely unravels. She runs toward the tow truck, her designer heels clicking frantically against the pavement. She grabs the sleeve of the repo man's neon vest, sobbing hysterically. "You cannot take these," Madison screams, tears streaming down her face, ruining her meticulous makeup. "We are wealthy. We are important people in this city. You are ruining my life. Stop it right now." The repo man simply ignores her, pulling a lever that raises the second SUV off the ground. Madison falls to her knees right there on the dirty concrete. She buries her face in her hands, weeping loudly and theatrically, creating a massive public spectacle. People are actively pulling out their smartphones now, recording the spectacular downfall of the arrogant luxury concierge owner and his hysterical brand-obsessed wife. I sit in my quiet, comfortable car, watching the entire scene unfold with absolute unbothered serenity. They thought they could step on me forever. They thought my purpose in life was to absorb their financial failures and smile through their disrespect. Now they are learning the brutal, uncompromising reality of consequence. Right as the first tow truck pulls away from the curb, dragging Andre's fake wealth down the street, my cell phone lights up in the passenger seat. The caller identification displays a name I was expecting. It is Silas. I take a slow, deep breath, savoring the moment before I press the answer button and bring the phone to my ear. I do not say hello, I just wait. Zaria. Silas gasps into the receiver. His booming, authoritative pastor voice is completely gone. He sounds erratic, terrified, and breathless, like an old man who has just run a marathon. His breathing is ragged. The background noise sounds like a busy grocery store, but the panic in his tone is absolute. "My cards are declining." Silas stammers, his voice shaking violently. "All of them. I went to pay for the Thanksgiving groceries, and the terminal rejected every single card. I called the bank manager. He said our accounts are frozen. All the checking accounts, the savings, the emergency fund, everything is locked." I look out the window. The second tow truck is pulling away, leaving Andre and Madison standing on an empty street surrounded by spilled shopping bags and staring pedestrians. "That sounds like a very severe administrative issue, Dad," I say, my voice perfectly smooth and devoid of any sympathy. "Have you tried praying over the bank terminal?" "This is not a joke," Silas yells, desperation breaking through his pride. "The bank manager said a holding company executed a total asset freeze due to a cross-collateral default. We have absolutely no money, Zaria. Nothing." He takes a shuddering breath, trying to force his tone back into a commanding register, but failing miserably. "You need to come to the house tomorrow," Silas demands, though it sounds much more like a plea. "We are having a mandatory Thanksgiving dinner. I know things got heated at the church, but we are family. We have to stick together. I have a final solution. I have a plan to save this family, to save your brother, and to save our home. I need you at that table tomorrow at 2 o'clock sharp. You have to be there, Zaria. We cannot survive this without you." I lean back against my headrest. I watch Andre fall onto the sidewalk beside his weeping wife, burying his head in his hands. I think about the heavy black leather folder currently sitting on the passenger seat next to me, containing the legal deeds to every single thing my father claims to own. "I would not miss it for the world, Dad." I reply, a cold, bright smile spreading across my face. "Have a blessed afternoon." I press the end call button, cutting off his frantic response. I put the car in drive, check my mirrors, and pull smoothly away from the curb, leaving them all drowning in the wreckage they built with their own hands. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and I am going to serve them the absolute best meal of their entire lives. The drive to my childhood home takes exactly 30 minutes, but navigating the familiar suburban streets feels like crossing into an entirely different dimension. I park my car in the driveway, noticing the empty space where Andre usually parks his flashy leased luxury vehicles. The neighborhood is quiet, filled with the warmth of the holiday. I can smell wood smoke from fireplaces and hear faint laughter from the houses I pass. But as I walk up the concrete path to my parents' front door, the atmosphere surrounding the Washington house is completely suffocating. There is no holiday air radiating from these walls. There is no joy. There is only a desperate, suffocating tension leaking through the very bricks. I do not bother knocking. I push the front door open and step into the foyer. The smell of roasted turkey, candied yams, and baked macaroni and cheese fills the air, but the scent is entirely overshadowed by the heavy stench of panic. The house is deathly silent. I hear no football game playing on the television. I hear no overlapping conversations or the clinking of silverware. I walk slowly into the formal dining room. The scene before me looks like a twisted, miserable painting. The grand mahogany dining table is fully set with Patricia pristine fine china and crystal glasses. A massive golden brown turkey sits dead center on a silver platter, completely untouched. The food is getting cold. Nobody is eating. Madison is slumped in her chair, staring blankly at the wall. Her face is stripped of its usual arrogant makeup, her eyes red and puffy from crying over her repossessed vehicles. She is gripping a wine glass so tightly her knuckles are white. Andre is sitting next to her, resting his elbows on the table and rubbing his temples in a rhythmic, frantic motion. He looks like a man who has not slept in days. Patricia sits rigid on the opposite side, wringing a cloth napkin between her hands, her carefully styled hair looking slightly disheveled. Silas sits at the head of the table. He is not wearing his usual holiday suit. He wears a wrinkled, button-down shirt, his posture defensive and coiled. He breathes heavily, his chest rising and falling with anxious energy. He does not say grace. He does not offer a warm Thanksgiving greeting. He simply raises a trembling hand and points to the single empty chair at the opposite end of the long table. I walk over and pull the chair out, taking my seat with absolute composure. I place my designer tote bag on the floor right beside my feet. Sitting here, I am violently struck by the memory of every Thanksgiving I endured in this house for the past 15 years. I spent every single holiday trapped in the sweltering kitchen, basting the turkey, baking the pies, and scrubbing the pots while Silas and Andre lounged in the living room watching sports. When it was time to eat, Silas would carve the bird and place the largest, most succulent cuts of meat directly onto Andre's plate, praising his golden boy. I was left to scrape together. Whatever side dishes remained completely ignored until it was time to clear the table and wash the dishes. They treated me like the hired help. Today I am not serving anyone. Silas does not waste a single second. He reaches into the leather briefcase resting on the floor next to his chair. He pulls out a thick, heavy stack of documents secured with a large metal binder clip. With a swift, aggressive motion, he slides the massive stack of papers down the length of the polished mahogany table. The papers glide across the wood and stop right in front of my empty dinner plate. I glance down. The logos of 3 different high-interest predatory lending companies are printed across the top pages. I see refinancing agreements. I see personal loan applications demanding exorbitant interest rates. What is this? I ask, my voice smooth and perfectly flat. This is our salvation. Silas commands, his voice tight with desperation, but still layered with that familiar, demanding patriarchal authority. I am facing an unprecedented attack. A demonic corporate entity froze my banking access. The repo men stole your brother Fleet right off the street. We are out of time, Zaria. You are going to put your name on these papers today. I look at the documents again, feeling a cold, dark amusement bubbling in my chest. He wants me to sign away my financial future to cover his catastrophic gambling. I am not signing anything, I state, simply leaning back in my chair. Patricia slams her hands flat against the table, startling Madison. You will do exactly as your father tells you, Patricia shrieks, her voice cracking with hysteria. We are going to lose everything. Do you understand me? The bank is going to take the house. The landlord is locking Andre out. You have pristine credit because we allowed you to live under our roof for years. You owe us your financial stability. I paid you rent every single month, I remind her, my tone completely unbothered by her panic. And then you raise that rent to $2,500 to fund the very business that is currently sinking your entire lives. This sounds like a consequence of your own actions. Andre suddenly slams his fist on the table, rattling the crystal glasses. You have to take on this debt, Zaria. He yells, his voice cracking with pure fear. If you do not sign those loans, Madison is going to leave me. She already packed a bag. She said if I do not have a car by Monday, she is flying back to her parents. Madison does not deny it. She just takes a large, desperate gulp of her wine and glares at me. If you do not sign those papers, you are ruining my marriage. Madison spits tears of pure entitlement streaming down her face. You are doing this just to be malicious. Silas stands up from the head of the table. He leans heavily on his hands, glaring at me down the length of the dining room. He tries to project the terrifying authority that used to make me shrink into myself as a child. You will take out these loans, Silas commands, his voice booming through the silent house. You will transfer the cash directly into my account so I can unlock our assets and save your brother business. We raised you, we fed you, we put clothes on your back. Andre is the firstborn son. He is the legacy of the Washington family, and you are going to fulfill your God-given purpose. You are nothing but the safety net for this family. Now pick up the pen and sign the papers. The absolute breathtaking audacity of his demand hangs heavily in the air. He is literally demanding that I step into financial quicksand to serve as a human bridge for a brother who never respected me and a sister-in-law who threw ice water in my face just 48 hours ago. They are demanding my blood to quench their thirst. I look at the cheap plastic pens Silas threw on top of the loan documents. I look at my mother, who is glaring at me with hateful expectation. I look at my brother, trembling with cowardice. And I look at my father, a man completely blinded by his own toxic pride. I do not argue. I do not raise my voice to defend myself. I do not shed a single tear over their absolute rejection of me as a daughter. Instead, I reach out and wrap my fingers around the stem of my crystal wine glass. I lift it slowly to my lips. I take a very slow, deliberate sip of the dark red Cabernet, savoring the rich, complex flavor. I lower the glass and set it down softly on the table. I reach down into my designer tote bag resting by my feet. My fingers find the smooth, cold surface of the object I brought with me. I pull it out. It is a thick, heavy black leather-bound folder. I hold the folder up for a fraction of a second, letting the dark leather catch the light from the dining room chandelier. Then with a swift, fluid motion, I drop it directly onto the center of the mahogany table. It lands with a heavy, resounding thud right next to the roasted turkey, the sound echoing sharply through the dead silence of the room. The heavy thud of the black leather folder against the polished mahogany table makes the silverware rattle. Silas stares at it, his eyes narrowing into dark slits. He is accustomed to absolute, unquestioned compliance. He expects me to shrink back to pick up his cheap plastic pen and to sign my financial death warrant, just like I have always done to keep the peace. I look at him, keeping my posture perfectly relaxed, my shoulders rolled back in a stance of total authority. I am not signing anything. Dad, I say softly, my voice completely devoid of the fear he expects to hear. But you might want to look at what I brought. Silas bristles, his face flushing a deep, angry red. He slams his hand flat against the table, shaking the crystal wine glasses. Do not play games with me, Zaria, he growls. I am the head of this household, and I gave you a direct command. You are going to sign those loan documents right now, or you will face the wrath of this family. Before Silas can finish his righteous threat, Andre reaches across the roasted turkey and snatches the black folder. He moves with frantic, desperate energy. Andre has spent his entire 35 years of life looking for the easy way out, waiting for someone else to hand him a life raft. He rips the folder open, his hands shaking so violently that he nearly tears the thick, expensive parchment paper inside. He probably expects to see a cashier's check. He probably thinks I went to my bank, drained my life savings, and brought him the cash to save his counterfeit empire. He expects a total surrender. Instead, his eyes hit the first page. I watch closely as the arrogant, entitled sneer completely melts off my brother's face. The color drains from his skin so fast, he looks like he might physically pass out. He is staring at a legally binding, fully executed commercial property deed. It is the deed to the exact building where his luxury concierge business is located. The building his landlord was about to lock him out of. The building he thought the bank was going to foreclose on. Andre swallows hard, his breath catching painfully in his throat. He traces his trembling finger over the heavy notary seal at the bottom of the page. He reads the bold print stating the total transfer of ownership and the assumption of all associated debt. When we were teenagers, Silas used to call mandatory family meetings in this exact dining room whenever the bills were due. He would lay out the mortgage statements and the electric bills, pointing at the numbers and demanding we all recognize how much he sacrificed to keep a roof over our heads. He used that mortgage as a weapon to demand absolute respect and unquestioned obedience. He told me constantly that until I owned my own property, I had no voice in his house. I had to endure his strict rules, his control, and his blatant favoritism toward Andre, all because my name was not on the deed. Today, the rules of his own game are working flawlessly against him. Andre cannot speak. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. He flips frantically to the second page in the folder, his hands trembling even worse now. He stares at the next document. This one is intimately familiar to him. It is the deed to the family home, the very house we are currently sitting in. The house Silas and Patricia secretly leveraged to the absolute limit just to fund Andre's leased vehicles and Madison's designer wardrobe. The paper clearly dictates that the secondary mortgages, the primary loan, and the total deed of trust have been fully acquired, paid off, and transferred in their entirety to a single private entity. What is it? Andre Silas demands, his voice losing some of its booming authority as he watches his golden boy completely unravel. What did she bring? Is it the money? Andre slowly looks up from the black folder. He looks at Silas, then he looks at Patricia, and finally his terrified, wide-open gaze locks onto me. He looks like a man who just realized he stepped on a landmine and heard the sharp metallic click under his boot. "We do not own the house," Dad Andre whispers, his voice cracking with pure terror. "The bank sold the debt. They sold everything. The commercial space, the house. We do not own any of it anymore." Patricia lets out a sharp, breathless gasp, clutching the edge of the dining table so hard her knuckles turn white. "That is a lie," she shrieks, refusing to accept the sudden collapse of her suburban kingdom. Silas tells him he is lying. The bank manager said they froze the accounts pending a review. He never said they sold the house. We have rights. We are prominent members of this community. They cannot just sell our home without giving us a chance to prey on it and find the funds. I watch my mother unravel, remembering how she used to parade around this neighborhood, acting like she owned the entire block. She treated the waitstaff at local restaurants like garbage and looked down on anyone in our church congregation who rented their homes. Now she is sitting in a dining room that legally belongs to a corporate holding company she cannot even name. Silas snatches the folder out of Andre's shaking hands. He pulls his reading glasses from his shirt pocket and shoves them onto his face. He aggressively scans the legal documents, muttering frantic prayers under his breath, as if God is going to magically change the ink on the paper. But the ink is final. The signatures are authenticated. The transfer is absolute. He reads the exact clauses detailing the foreclosure proceedings that have already been initiated. He sees the staggering sum of the debt that has been bought out from under him, consolidating his financial ruin into one single inescapable contract. He drops the folder onto the table, his chest heaving. The illusion of his power is completely broken. He is no longer the mighty patriarch dictating terms. He is a man drowning in a sea of debt that he created. Madison, who has been sitting frozen in her chair, suddenly leans over Andre's shoulder. Her eyes dart frantically across the legal jargon, desperately trying to find a loophole that will save her counterfeit luxury lifestyle. She squints at the bold heading printed at the very top of both property deeds. She reads the name of the holding company that just swallowed her entire world whole. Who the hell is Onyx Holdings? Madison screeches her voice, hitting a panicked, hysterical pitch as she looks wildly around the room. Who is doing this to us? The panic in her voice is absolute perfection. I do not rush my response. I reach out my fingers, wrapping smoothly around the stem of my crystal wine glass. I take one last unbothered sip of my Cabernet. I set the glass down softly on the mahogany table. You are looking at her, I say, my voice completely steady and cold. The absolute shock paralyzes the room. It is a profound, suffocating silence. Nobody breathes. Nobody moves a single muscle. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway suddenly sounds like a sledgehammer striking an anvil. Madison stands frozen. Her mouth slightly open, her eyes darting from my face to the black folder and back again. Silas stares at me, as if I have suddenly sprouted a second head. Patricia drops her cloth napkin onto her lap, her hands trembling violently. That is impossible, Patricia whispers, her voice barely carrying across the table. You do not have that kind of money, Zaria. You are a basement renter. You make spreadsheets. I reach out and adjust the edge of the black folder so it sits perfectly straight on the mahogany table. I do make spreadsheets, Mom. I also make software. Remember that little budgeting app? Madison loved to mock every time she walked past my room holding a glass of wine I paid for. I sold that exact application 3 weeks ago to a global technology conglomerate. It was an 8-figure acquisition. I walked away with over $12 million in liquid capital after taxes. Andre lets out a sharp, choked gasp. He falls back into his dining chair, his legs seemingly giving out beneath him. $12 million. The number hangs in the air, completely obliterating the false hierarchy they have enforced my entire life. You sat at this very table. I continue keeping my gaze locked on Silas, and you told me I was nothing but a safety net for this family. You told me my purpose was to quietly fund my brother's majestic destiny. You charged me $2,500 to live in a moldy basement because you thought I was a pathetic trapped spinster who had absolutely no other options. You thought I was weak because I chose peace over conflict. But I was not trapped. I was simply staying close enough to watch you dig your own graves. Silas shakes his head, his face turning an ashen, sickly gray. But the commercial property, he stammers, pointing a shaking finger at the deeds. The bank told me they sold the debt to a massive holding company, a corporate entity. I am the corporate entity, Dad. I established Onyx Holdings the very day you raised my rent and let your daughter-in-law insult me in my own home. I used a fraction of my acquisition payout to buy your distressed debt directly from Crestview Regional Bank. They were absolutely thrilled to get rid of you. They sold me the note on Andre's business and the secondary mortgages on this house for pennies on the dollar. I own the commercial lease. I own the storefront. And as of this morning, I own the deed to the home we are currently sitting in. Madison suddenly slams her hands on the table. You cannot do this, she shrieks, her voice reaching a hysterical pitch. You are family. You cannot just buy our debt and foreclose on us out of spite. We are building a luxury brand. Andre has investors. I let out a harsh, genuine laugh. A luxury brand, is that what you call it? I do not give them a single second to recover. I open the black folder again and bypass the property deeds, flipping to a thick stack of printed spreadsheets clipped to the back. My corporate attorney, Chloe, ran a complete forensic financial audit on Elite Apex Concierge before I agreed to purchase the debt. I announced, pulling the audit report from the folder. When a bank considers a business a distressed asset, they open the books. And your books, Andre, are an absolute masterpiece of financial fraud. Andre looks like he is going to be physically sick. He reaches a hand out across the table. Zaria, please do not do this. You did not show me any mercy when you stole my college tuition savings to pay for your criminal defense lawyer, I remind him, my voice dropping to a dangerous quiet register. So I will not be showing you any mercy today. I look down at the audit, holding it up so Silas can see the highlighted lines of accounting. Let us talk about where Dad's mortgage money actually went. Silas leans forward, his chest heaving. What do you mean where the money went? It went to the business. Andre needed capital for the fleet. He needed marketing. He needed overhead. I smile grimly. That is what he told you, Dad. But that is not what he bought. I trace my finger down the first highlighted column. Let us look at last February. You took out a $75,000 secondary mortgage on this house, Silas, because Andre told you he needed to secure a commercial lease. But according to these bank records, only $20,000 went to the landlord. The other $55,000 went to a luxury travel agency. Andre and Madison spent 2 weeks in a private overwater bungalow in the Maldives. Patricia gasps, turning to stare at her son. You told us you were in New York securing a corporate contract. I flip to the next page. Here is a charge from April, $12,000 at a high-end designer boutique in Paris. That matches the exact price of the counterfeit bag you were carrying at the Vanguard Gala, Madison. Except you did not buy the real bag, did you? You bought a cheap fake on Canal Street, and you pocketed the $12,000 to fund your weekly trips to the Elite Day Spa downtown. I have the receipts right here. $500 a week on caviar facials and deep tissue massages, all paid directly from the commercial business account. Madison's face turns beet red. She shrinks back into her chair, crossing her arms defensively over her chest. I am his wife, she snaps, though her voice is trembling. I have to maintain a certain image for the clientele. You maintain an image by bleeding my parents dry, I shoot back. I flip to a third page, sliding it directly across the table toward Silas. He reaches for it with a shaking hand. Look at the line items, Dad, I command him. Look at what you traded your home for. $5,000 for a private sommelier to host wine tasting parties at their apartment. $8,000 for custom-tailored suits Andre wore to pretend he was a successful entrepreneur. $30,000 in cash withdrawals at a casino just across the state line because Andre thought he could gamble his way out of the hole he dug. Silas reads the paper. His eyes dart frantically across the columns of numbers, the dates the undeniable proof of his son's absolute recklessness. The veins in his neck bulge against his shirt collar. He is a man who built his entire identity on pride, on the illusion of control, and on the absolute superiority of his firstborn son. I sit back in my chair watching the reality crash over him. You co-signed that commercial loan, Dad. You put up the family house as collateral because you believed Andre was a genius businessman. You charged me exorbitant rent and forced me to live in a flooded, moldy basement just to subsidize his greatness. But Andre did not just fail at business. He never even tried. He used your house as a personal piggy bank to fund his wife's vanity and his own pathetic delusions. He actively bled you dry. Silas drops the paper onto the table. His hands are trembling so violently, he has to press them flat against the mahogany wood to steady himself. He slowly turns his head to look at Andre. The illusion of the golden child shatters completely. The golden pedestal crumbles into absolute dust right in front of my eyes. Silas is not looking at a successful entrepreneur anymore. He is looking at a parasite. He is looking at the man who just cost him the roof over his head, his standing in the church, and his entire financial legacy, all for a couple of vacations and some spa treatments. Dad, I can explain, Andre stammers, holding his hands up defensively. It was an investment in our image. You have to spend money to make money. The clients needed to see us living large. You stole my house. Silas whispers, his voice shaking with a rage so profound it seems to vibrate through the floorboards. I mortgaged the home I built with my own 2 hands. I took from your sister. I lied to the church elders. And you spent my equity on massages and casino chips. Madison tries to intervene, her sheer entitlement overriding her common sense. We are a team, Silas. We needed to look the part. Andre was doing his best. You cannot blame us just because your daughter decided to be a vindictive corporate predator. Silas snaps his head toward Madison, his eyes blazing with a terrifying, unholy fury. For the first time in my life, I see my father look at his precious daughter-in-law with pure, unadulterated disgust. The absolute fury on Silas's face freezes into a mask of pure confusion. The heavy, suffocating air in the dining room seems to instantly drop 10 degrees. Andre takes a shaky step backward, bumping into the wall while Madison's hands fly to her mouth. Patricia stops sniffling entirely, her tear-streaked face turning toward the large bay windows at the front of the house. What are you talking about? Silas demands, his voice losing its booming authoritative edge, replaced by a slight, uncontrollable tremor. What sheriff? The one I dispatched to my property. I state smoothly, remaining seated in my chair, radiating total calm amidst their rising panic. When I executed the contract to acquire the distressed debt on this house through Onyx Holdings, I did not just buy the mortgage. I bought a home that was already deep in the foreclosure process because you stopped making the secondary loan payments 4 months ago. The bank was just waiting for the final court approval to seize the asset. I expedited that process. I finalized the paperwork yesterday. I lean forward, resting my forearms on the mahogany table, making sure my eyes lock onto my father's. I am not here to negotiate a payment plan, Dad, I say, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. I am not here to bail out Andre. And I am certainly not here to transfer my $12 million software acquisition into your bank account so you can play pretend billionaire at the country club. I came here today for one very specific reason. I point to the black leather folder sitting next to the roasted turkey. I came here to serve you. Right on cue, heavy authoritative footsteps echo on the concrete front porch outside. The heavy brass knocker on the front door slams 3 times, the sound violently echoing through the silent foyer. Bang, bang, bang. Patricia lets out a high, terrified squeak, clutching the collar of her blouse. Madison scrambles backward, trying to hide behind Andre, who looks like he might actually vomit onto the dining room floor. Silas just stands there, completely paralyzed, staring at the archway leading to the front hall. Sheriff's Department, a deep, muffled voice calls out through the thick wood of the front door. We have legal notices to serve for Silas and Patricia Washington and Andre Washington. The color completely drains from my father's face. The great untouchable patriarch of the Washington family, the man who used scripture to manipulate me and fear to control me, suddenly looks like a very old, very broken, and very terrified man. He looks down at me, his eyes wide and pleading. Zaria, please. Silas whispers, his voice cracking, completely stripped of his pride. Do not do this. The neighbors will see. The church congregation will find out. Please, you cannot let them throw us out like criminals. We are your family. You lost the right to call yourselves my family the day you charged me $2,500 to live in a moldy basement while buying this fraud, a fleet of luxury cars. I replied, gesturing toward Andre. You lost the right to call yourselves my family the day you watched this woman throw ice water in my face in a house of worship and told me I deserved it. The heavy brass knocker slams against the front door again. Sheriff's Department, open the door or we will be forced to make entry. I stand up slowly from the dining table. I smooth the fabric of my jeans, pick up my designer tote bag from the floor, and slide the strap over my shoulder. I reach out, grab my crystal glass, and take one final, deeply satisfying sip of my Cabernet. You should probably get the door, Dad, I say softly, offering him a brilliant, razor-sharp smile. It is incredibly rude to keep law enforcement waiting on Thanksgiving. I do not wait for him to move. I turn my back on my father, my mother, my brother, and his counterfeit wife. I walk out of the dining room, my boots clicking a steady, powerful rhythm against the hardwood floor. I walk through the foyer and reach out, pulling the heavy front door wide open. 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies are standing on the porch, flanked by Elias, my sharply dressed wealth manager, who is holding a thick stack of manila envelopes. Good afternoon, gentlemen, I say, offering the deputies a polite nod. The tenants are in the dining room right down the hall. They are expecting you. Thank you, Ms. Washington, the lead deputy replies, touching the brim of his hat before stepping past me into the house. Elias hands the deputies the legal envelopes. I stand on the front porch, breathing in the crisp, cool autumn air, listening to the beautiful symphony of chaos erupting inside the house. I hear the deputies loudly announcing their presence. I hear Patricia dissolve into a hysterical, screeching, wailing fit. I hear Madison screaming at Andre that her life is ruined. I hear Silas desperately trying to negotiate with men who do not care about his status in the church. They have exactly 72 hours to vacate the premises, correct? I ask Elias, who is standing beside me on the porch watching the scene with total professional detachment. 72 hours, Ms. Washington, Elias confirms smoothly. If they are not completely off the property by Sunday afternoon, the deputies will return to physically remove them and all remaining possessions will be seized. The same notice is currently being taped to the front door of your brother's commercial storefront. Excellent, I say, pulling my car keys from my tote bag. Make sure the locks are changed on both properties at exactly 1 minute past the deadline. I walk down the concrete path toward my unassuming sedan. The neighbors are already starting to peek out from behind their curtains, drawn by the presence of the marked sheriff's cruisers parked in front of the pristine Washington home. The illusion is permanently shattered. The truth is fully exposed. I slide into the driver's seat of my car, start the engine, and pull away from the curb. I do not look back at the house. I do not feel a single ounce of guilt or regret. I feel an overwhelming, radiant sense of absolute peace. 1 year later, the city skyline glitters through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. The autumn sky is painted in deep shades of purple and gold. I am standing in my massive state-of-the-art kitchen, pouring a glass of expensive reserve wine. The penthouse is filled with the warm, rich sounds of genuine laughter and the smell of a perfectly roasted turkey. I am hosting my own Thanksgiving dinner. Sitting around my massive dining table is my chosen family. Chloe, my brilliant corporate attorney, is laughing at a joke told by Elias. Next to them sit three of my closest friends from the tech incubator, women who supported my vision when I was coding in a damp basement and eating instant noodles. There is no tension in this room. There are no expectations, no manipulation, and no hidden agendas. There is only mutual respect and authentic, unconditional support. The Washington family legacy looks very different today. Andre's luxury concierge business was permanently boarded up the Monday after I foreclosed. Stripped of his fake wealth, he was forced to take a minimum wage job, working the night shift at a local distribution center. Madison made good on her threat. The second the money dried up, she filed for divorce, taking whatever cheap counterfeit bags she had left and moving back into her parents' cramped spare bedroom. Silas and Patricia faced the ultimate social reckoning. When the church congregation discovered that their senior deacon had secretly mortgaged his home to fund a gambling habit and lost his property to foreclosure, the scandal was absolute. Silas was immediately stripped of his title and asked to step down from all church leadership positions. With their credit ruined and zero equity left to their names, my parents were forced to pack their belongings into trash bags and move into a tiny, run-down one-bedroom apartment on the far side of town. I never answered another phone call from them. Onyx Holdings sold the suburban house and the commercial storefront a month later, adding another massive influx of capital to my growing portfolio. I walk over to the head of my own dining table, raising my crystal glass to the incredible group of people sitting before me. They raise their glasses in return, their faces lit with genuine warmth and pride. I take a sip of the wine, looking out over the city that I conquered on my own terms. They told me I was nothing but a safety net. They told me I was a failure because I refused to play their toxic games. But they forgot one very important detail about safety nets. When you push them too far, and when you cut the strings that hold them in place, the people standing on top are the ones who fall. I did not fall. I built an empire from the ashes of their disrespect. And the view from the top is absolutely breathtaking. The heavy brass knocker on the front door slams against the wood with 3 loud, distinct strikes. The sound violently shatters whatever delusion was left in the dining room. Silas' face drains of all color. Patricia lets out a sharp, breathless squeak, clutching her pearl necklace as if it might choke her. I do not wait for my father to permit entry. I reach into my designer tote bag, pull out my phone, and tap a single button to remotely unlock the smart lock I had installed on the front door the day I purchased the property. The heavy door swings open. Heavy boots echo on the hardwood floor of the foyer. 2 uniformed sheriff deputies step into the formal dining room, their hands resting naturally near their duty belts. Flanking them is Elias, my impeccably dressed wealth manager, holding a thick stack of manila envelopes. Silas and Patricia Washington, the lead deputy, asks, his voice booming with unquestionable authority. Silas stammers, attempting to puff out his chest, trying to summon the untouchable church patriarch persona he has hidden behind for decades. Officer, there is a misunderstanding. This is a private family Thanksgiving dinner. You are interrupting a holy gathering. We are executing a legal order of eviction and asset seizure. Elias corrects smoothly, stepping forward to hand the deputies the paperwork. On behalf of Onyx Holdings, I watch my mother meticulously crafted reality completely disintegrate. She lunges toward the deputies, pointing a trembling manicured finger at me. Arrest her. She is stealing our home. She forged these documents. The deputy does not even blink. These deeds are fully authenticated by the state. You are currently trespassing on private property. He places the manila envelope directly onto the mahogany table, right next to the untouched roasted turkey. You are officially served with a 72-hour notice to vacate the premises. If you, your family, or your belongings are on this property by Sunday at noon, you will be physically removed and arrested for criminal trespass. Madison does not hesitate. The survival instincts of a gold digger are sharp and ruthless. She turns on her heel, her counterfeit designer heels clicking wildly against the floor. I am not going to jail for you, Andre, she screams. I am calling my divorce lawyer right now. She sprints up the stairs to pack her bags. Andre chases after her, crying, begging her not to leave him, completely abandoning his parents in his desperate attempt to hold on to a woman who only ever loved his credit limit. Silas turns to me, his eyes wide wild and utterly defeated. Zaria, please, he whispers, his voice cracking, completely stripped of his pride. Daughter, we have nowhere to go. The church will find out. I will lose my deaconship. I will lose my respect. You cannot do this to your own blood. You did this to yourself, Silas, I say, dropping the title of dad permanently. You leveraged your family's shelter to fund an illusion. You stole my peace, my credit, and my dignity to protect a son who just ran upstairs to chase a woman who hates him. You have 72 hours. I suggest you start packing instead of praying. I turn my back on the screaming, the crying, the total implosion of the Washington family facade. I walk out the front door, stepping into the crisp November air. The heavy oak door clicks shut behind me, severing my ties to their toxicity forever. 1 year later. The view from my penthouse is absolutely breathtaking. The autumn sky over the city is a brilliant canvas of bruised purple and burning gold. I stand in my state-of-the-art kitchen pouring a glass of vintage Pinot Noir. The consequences of that Thanksgiving hit my former family with the force of a swinging wrecking ball. Andre Luxury Concierge Business was permanently boarded up the very next Monday. Without his flashy cars or his daddy's stolen money, the illusion evaporated instantly. Madison filed for divorce before the 72-hour eviction notice even expired. She took the remaining scraps of whatever cash he had hidden away and left him with nothing but staggering legal fees and a shattered ego. The last I heard, the golden child of the Washington family is working the night shift at a local distribution center, forced to wear a sweaty uniform instead of a custom tuxedo. He spends his days dodging collection agencies for the unsecured loans he took out trying to win Madison back. Silas and Patricia faced an even more brutal reckoning. When the church elders discovered that their senior deacon had secretly mortgaged his home to fund fraud and that he had lost the property to a corporate foreclosure, the scandal rocked the entire congregation. Pastor Williams convened a special disciplinary board. Silas was publicly stripped of his title, his robes, and his standing in the community. The very people they had sacrificed my well-being to impress turned their backs on them without a second thought. Patricia could no longer show her face at the women auxiliary meetings. The fake smiles and the high society church gossip turned directly against her, tearing her reputation to shreds. With their credit completely destroyed and zero equity left to their names, they were forced to downsize into a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a dilapidated neighborhood across town. It is the exact kind of neighborhood Patricia used to mock from her church pew. They reap exactly what they sowed, living out their retirement years in the suffocating reality of their own disastrous choices. I never answered another phone call from them. Onyx Holdings sold the suburban house and the commercial storefront a month later, adding another massive influx of capital to my growing portfolio. I take a slow sip of my wine, letting the rich flavors settle on my tongue. The sound of genuine, joyous laughter echoes from my grand dining room. I walk out to join my chosen family. Chloe, my brilliant corporate attorney, is sitting next to Elias, who is carving a massive golden turkey. My three closest friends, women who actually supported my vision when I was coding in a damp basement and eating instant noodles, are passing around warm plates of food. There is no tension in this room. There is no manipulation, no begging for basic respect, no conditional love masking itself as holy duty. This is an empire built on absolute truth. I take my seat at the head of my own table. Chloe raises her glass, catching the light of the crystal chandelier above us. To Zaria, she says, a fierce, proud smile on her face. To the woman who bought the table instead of begging for a seat at it. To Zaria, the table echoes their voices, warm and full of genuine love. I look out over the glittering city skyline. I am a self-made queen who built a fortress from the ashes of their disrespect. I did not just survive their attempts to break me, I weaponized their greed and used it to secure my absolute freedom. I take a sip of wine, completely unbothered, utterly unapologetic, and surrounded by legally binding success. The sound of crystal ringing in the penthouse is the sweetest music I have ever heard, proving once and for all that the best revenge is simply living a life they can never touch. The ultimate lesson here is that your worth is never defined by those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect and nurture you are the very ones holding you back. True power does not come from seeking validation or begging for a seat at a toxic family's table. It comes from having the courage to walk away and quietly build your own empire from scratch. Blood may make you relatives, but respect and mutual support make a family. Protect your peace, secure your independence, and never let anyone dim your hard-earned light. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic relatives to protect your peace and build your own success? Let me know your story in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more empowering content.